There is a tendency among people, even among scientists, to think that describing nature is straightforward. We observe phenomena, we measure quantities, we write down what we see, and that is that. Description seems like a simple, passive act of recording reality as it presents itself to us. But I must tell you that my entire career in physics, particularly my work on quantum mechanics, has taught me that describing nature is far from simple. It requires extraordinary care, attention to context, recognition of the limits of language, and awareness of the assumptions hidden in our concepts. The way we describe nature can illuminate or obscure, can lead to understanding or confusion, can capture truth or propagate error. This is why nature must be described carefully, and understanding what that means is essential for doing physics well. Let me begin with an experience from my early work that first made me aware of how treacherous description can be. When I was developing my model of the atom in 1913, I found myself using language borrowed entirely from classical physics to describe phenomena that were clearly not classical. I spoke of electrons in orbits, as if they were tiny planets circling a nuclear sun. I described them as jumping from one orbit to another, as if they were physical objects moving through space. This language was convenient and intuitive, but it was also deeply misleading. The problem was that every word I used carried connotations from classical physics that did not apply to the atomic world. An orbit in classical physics is a continuous path that an object follows through space, with the object having a definite position and velocity at every moment. But an electron in an atom is not following such a path. Between measurements, it does not have a definite position or velocity. The word orbit suggests a kind of motion that simply does not occur in quantum mechanics. And yet I used this word because I had no better language available, and because it helped me communicate my ideas to other physicists who were steeped in classical thinking. The quantum jump was even more problematic. In classical physics, when something moves from point A to point B, it passes through all the intermediate points. But when an electron transitions between energy levels in my atomic model, it does not pass through intermediate energies. It disappears from one state and appears in another instantaneously. Calling this a jump suggests a trajectory, a path through space and time, but there is no such path. The electron does not jump in any classical sense. It undergoes a discontinuous transition that has no analog in our everyday experience. I was acutely aware that my descriptions were inadequate, that the language I was using was approximate and potentially misleading. But what choice did I have? We must describe nature using language, and all our language has been developed to describe the macroscopic world of everyday experience, where objects have definite properties and follow continuous paths. When we venture into the atomic realm, we are trying to describe phenomena for which our language was never designed. This mismatch between language and reality is the first reason why nature must be described carefully. As quantum mechanics developed through the 1920s, this problem became more acute. Erwin Schrödinger developed his wave equation and began describing electrons as waves. But electrons are not water waves or sound waves. The wave function is a mathematical object, a complex valued function that gives probability amplitudes, not a physical wave made of some substance. When we say an electron is a wave, we are not saying it is literally undulating like water. We are saying it exhibits wave-like behavior in certain experimental contexts, that it can interfere and diffract, that it is described by a wave equation. The description wave is useful but incomplete and potentially misleading if taken too literally. Similarly, we sometimes describe electrons as particles. But electrons are not little billiard balls. They do not have definite positions and velocities at all times. They do not follow definite trajectories. When we call an electron a particle, we are emphasizing certain aspects of its behavior, particularly the fact that it arrives at detectors as a localized event, making a discrete click or spot. But the description particle is also incomplete and misleading if we import all the classical connotations of that word. This is why I developed the concept of complementarity. I argued that we need both wave and particle descriptions to capture the full behavior of quantum objects, but these descriptions are complementary rather than contradictory. They apply to different experimental contexts. In an experiment designed to reveal wave properties, like a double slit set up without path detection, we see interference patterns and must describe the electron as a wave. In an experiment designed to reveal particle properties, like tracking individual detection events, we must describe the electron as a particle. Neither description alone is complete, and both are necessary, but they cannot be applied simultaneously to the same experimental situation. This complementarity means we must be extraordinarily careful in how we describe quantum phenomena. We must always specify the experimental context, the measurement setup, the kind of observation being made. A description that is appropriate for one experimental arrangement may be completely inappropriate for another. There is no single, context-independent way to describe a quantum system that captures all its properties simultaneously. This is fundamentally different from classical physics, where we assume objects have all their properties at all times and our descriptions should capture this complete state. The need for careful description extends to the very concept of properties themselves. In classical physics, we assume that objects have properties independent of observation. A billiard ball has a definite position and velocity whether we measure them or not, and our description should reflect these objective properties. But quantum mechanics forces us to recognize that many properties do not exist in definite form until measurement brings them into existence. Before measurement, an electron does not have a definite position. It is described by a wave function that gives probabilities for different positions, but position itself is indefinite. So when I describe an electron as being at a particular location, I must be clear that I am describing the result of a position measurement, not a property the electron had before the measurement. The careless description the electron is at position X can be misleading if it suggests that position was a definite property all along. The careful description would be when we measured position, we found the electron at position X, or the wave function gives a high probability for finding the electron near position X if we were to measure. This is more cumbersome, but it is also more accurate because it acknowledges the role of measurement and the probabilistic nature of quantum properties. Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle provides another crucial constraint on how we must describe quantum systems. The principle tells us that position and momentum cannot both be described with arbitrary precision simultaneously. If I describe an electron as having a very precise position, I cannot simultaneously describe it as having a precise momentum. Any attempt to give a complete classical description specifying both quantities precisely would be inaccurate, violating the uncertainty principle. This means our descriptions must always acknowledge incompleteness and complementarity. We can describe position precisely or momentum precisely, but not both. We can describe wave properties or particle properties, but not both simultaneously. We must be careful not to claim more knowledge than is possible, not to give descriptions that presume all properties are simultaneously definite when quantum mechanics tells us they are not. I had many discussions with Albert Einstein about these matters. Einstein believed that a proper description of nature should specify what is really happening independent of observation. He wanted physics to describe objective reality, as it exists whether anyone looks at it or not. My insistence that descriptions must be tied to specific experimental contexts, that properties do not exist independent of measurement, troubled him deeply. He felt this made physics too subjective, too dependent on human choices about what to measure. But I maintained that Einstein was insisting on a kind of description that nature herself does not support. Quantum mechanics shows us that reality at the atomic level does not have the character that would allow the kind of objective, observer-independent description Einstein wanted. Our descriptions must reflect what nature actually is, not what we wish it to be. And what nature is at the quantum level requires descriptions that acknowledge the role of measurement, the contextuality of properties, the complementarity of different aspects. The EPR paradox in 1935 brought this disagreement into sharp focus. Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen showed that quantum mechanics allows us to describe certain properties of distant particles with precision by measuring their entangled partners. They argued that since we can choose which property to describe precisely, all properties must exist precisely whether we describe them or not. I responded that they were conflating the precision of our description after measurement with the existence of precise properties before measurement. The measurement creates the precise property we then describe. The careful description must acknowledge this temporal ordering and not retroactively attribute precision to pre-measurement states. This may seem like philosophical hairsplitting, but it has real consequences for how we do physics. If we carelessly describe quantum systems as if they have all their properties precisely defined at all times, we will make predictions that contradict experiment. John Bell showed this rigorously. He proved that if we describe entangled particles as having definite local properties independent of measurement, we must get correlations that satisfy certain inequalities. But experiments violate these inequalities, confirming that the careless description is wrong and the careful quantum description is correct. Nature must be described carefully because careless descriptions lead to false predictions. This is not merely a matter of philosophical preference. It is empirically determined. The experiments tell us which kinds of descriptions work and which do not. The quantum descriptions that acknowledge complementarity, uncertainty, and the role of measurement match reality. The classical descriptions that assume definite properties independent of observation do not. There is another aspect of careful description that I want to emphasize. We must be attentive to the distinction between the quantum system being described and the classical language we use to communicate our descriptions. I have always insisted that we need classical concepts to describe experimental arrangements and measurement results. We say the apparatus is set up this way, the pointer points to this value, the particle hit the screen here. These are classical descriptions using ordinary language with definite meanings. But the quantum system before measurement is not described classically. It is described by a wave function, by superpositions, by probability amplitudes. There is a fundamental distinction between the quantum formalism we use to calculate and predict, and the classical language we use to report what we observe. The measurement process bridges these two domains, transforming quantum indefiniteness into classical definiteness. Any description of quantum phenomena must navigate this boundary carefully. We cannot describe everything quantum mechanically, or we would have nothing but wave functions and would never be able to report definite results. We cannot describe everything classically, or we would miss the essential quantum features like superposition and interference. We must use both kinds of description appropriately, recognizing which applies where and how they relate through measurement. Careless descriptions often blur this distinction, applying classical concepts where quantum concepts are needed or trying to push quantum concepts all the way through to macroscopic objects. Either error leads to confusion. The careful description maintains clarity about what is quantum and what is classical, what is indefinite and what is definite, what exists before measurement, and what is created by measurement. Let me give you a concrete example of how careless description can mislead. Suppose I say an electron passes through both slits in a double-slit experiment. This sounds like a clear, definite statement. But what does it mean? Does it mean the electron splits into two pieces, with half going through each slit? No. Does it mean the electron rapidly oscillates between the two slits? No. Does it mean the electron exists simultaneously at both slits like a physical wave would? Not exactly. The careful description is that the electron's wave function has amplitude at both slits, representing the superposition of two path components that will interfere on the screen. The electron itself is not a thing that literally goes through both slits in any classical sense. It is a quantum object described by a wave function that encompasses both possibilities, and this wave function evolves to create interference. The careless shorthand "the electron goes through both slits" is useful for quick communication among physicists who understand what is really meant, but it is misleading for anyone trying to form a classical picture of what is happening. This is why I spent so much effort trying to develop a careful language for describing quantum phenomena, emphasizing complementarity, contextuality, the role of measurement. I was not being pedantic or obscure for its own sake. I was trying to create ways of describing quantum systems that were accurate rather than misleading, that respected the actual structure of quantum mechanics rather than imposing inappropriate classical concepts. The need for careful description also extends to how we talk about causality in quantum mechanics. In classical physics, we describe events as being caused by prior events in a deterministic chain. If I know the complete state now, I can calculate the state at any future time. Causes produce effects with certainty. But quantum mechanics includes fundamental randomness. When a radioactive atom decays, we cannot describe any prior cause that determined the exact moment of decay. We can give probabilities, but the individual event is not caused by anything we can specify. Careless description might say the decay has no cause, or it happens randomly without reason. But this suggests a kind of lawlessness or chaos that is not quite right. The careful description is that the decay is governed by probabilistic laws, that quantum mechanics gives precise predictions for decay rates even though individual events are not determined. The randomness is lawful randomness, constrained by quantum mechanical rules, not arbitrary chaos. Our description must capture this subtle point. Similarly, when we describe measurement in quantum mechanics, we must be careful about temporal language. We might carelessly say that measuring particle A instantly affects distant particle B in an entangled pair. This suggests a causal influence traveling faster than light, violating relativity. The careful description is that measuring particle A collapses the shared entangled state, which includes correlations with particle B, so that subsequent measurements on B will show correlations with the result on A. But no signal propagates from A to B. The correlation is built into the entangled state from the start, and measurement reveals it rather than creating it through superliminal influence. These may seem like fine distinctions, but they matter enormously for understanding quantum mechanics correctly. Careless descriptions have led to endless confusion and pseudoscientific speculation about quantum mechanics proving that consciousness affects reality, or that particles communicate faster than light, or that the future affects the past. All of these misunderstandings arise from imprecise, careless descriptions that import inappropriate concepts or fail to respect the actual structure of quantum mechanics. Throughout my career, I have tried to promote carefulness in how we describe quantum phenomena. This has sometimes made my writing seem dense or overly cautious. I have been criticized for not giving simple, clear answers to questions about what is really happening in quantum mechanics. But the reason I have been cautious is that simple, clear classical answers are usually wrong when applied to quantum systems. The truth requires more nuanced, more contextual, more careful description than classical intuition suggests. This does not mean quantum mechanics is vague or unclear. The mathematical formalism is perfectly precise. We can calculate probabilities, predict experimental outcomes, design technologies, all with extraordinary accuracy. But translating this precise mathematics into ordinary language requires great care because our language evolved to describe classical phenomena and does not naturally fit quantum reality. Nature must be described carefully because nature at the quantum level has a structure that is subtle, counterintuitive, and easily misrepresented by casual language. Our descriptions must acknowledge complementarity, recognizing that different experimental contexts require different descriptions. Our descriptions must acknowledge uncertainty, recognizing that not all properties can be precisely specified simultaneously. Our descriptions must acknowledge the role of measurement in bringing properties into definite existence. Our descriptions must maintain clarity about what is quantum and what is classical, what is indefinite and what is definite. When we are careful in our descriptions, when we pay attention to context and avoid importing inappropriate classical concepts, quantum mechanics becomes coherent and comprehensible. It does not match our everyday intuitions, but it is internally consistent and empirically successful. The apparent paradoxes and mysteries largely dissolve when we describe quantum phenomena carefully rather than carelessly. This is one of the most important lessons I have learned from a lifetime of working with quantum mechanics. Description is not a neutral, passive act of recording reality. It is an active process that can illuminate or obscure depending on how carefully we attend to the concepts we use, the assumptions we make, the contexts we specify. Nature will reveal her secrets to those who learn to describe her carefully, respecting her actual character rather than forcing her into preconceived classical molds. And that careful description, while requiring effort and discipline, ultimately leads to deeper understanding and truer knowledge of the quantum world.